Welcome back. All right, so I've got a board behind here which has the score from the Tampa Bay Detroit game. No peeking, you can't unless you can see through. If you're Superman, you might. I don't know, Superman. Anyways, and the after the first period between Boston and Philadelphia, I'm now talking to you fine people. And today's kind of COVID day, and there really isn't any other way to put this. We're into the second column here, but it's not all about what isn't happening and which teams are shut down, but. This started this afternoon where Bob McKenzie, Elliot Friedman, there were reports that there was something going on with the Minnesota Wild. Six players on the COVID list, so Foligno was already on it. They added Bugstad, Benino, Eriksson Ek, Johansson, Spurgeon. And all I could think was, so the centers and one of their key defensemen. That's not good. And so their games have been postponed through February 9th. And again, I don't know if this comes down to the league's decision or the team's decision on when it is time to just shut it down for now. But that's four. That's four teams that are currently shut down. Vegas is coming back on Friday, but there's three other teams that are shut down. And for the New Jersey Devils, we're up to 17 players on the list. So it's easier to tell you who's not on the list than who is. And again, this doesn't mean that everybody tests positive. That's not what this means. What it means is you've got a positive test or two here and there, and then you have to go through close contacts and decide who may very well have been in that situation. So this is where the idea that they have groups, small groups they're allowed to hang out in, that they have all this, and I know people are going to talk about the bench. I understand. And the Buffalo Sabres want to have a little chat about the bench as well. So the Sabres currently have four players who are on the list. And they believe that it's tied to the games against the Devils. Now, the NHL's saying, hey, look, we don't know that there's any kind of transmission during games. And the Buffalo Sabres are not happy with this response. So the question mark becomes this. So they're doing the 24-hour test, which I believe is the same thing that Major League Baseball used. And infamously, there was a positive test that came back during a game in the World Series, the deciding game, right? So it comes back as positive 24 hours later, meaning players could potentially be exposed and then find out the next day, which is what clearly has happened here. Now, the rapid tests that I think players would like to use, that's going to add costs, and I'm pretty sure the NHL and the NHLPA are sharing on costs. It might just be the teams, though. I've seen some conflicting reports that maybe the NHL is not paying for the tests, or they are, but either way, the problem, too, is the rapid tests are less reliable. PCR tests, which is what they're using, are reliable as far as not giving false positives, but false negatives are a thing. So the way this works is that if you're exposed, you may show up as negative, and then a day before you develop symptoms, you may show as positive. So you may very well have been able to be in a position where you get other people infected before you give a positive test. So false negatives are a problem. And so, yeah, this is an ongoing situation. We'll see if the NHL changes its testing policies. Again, if a rapid test means a false positive here and there, I would think that the trade-off right now, considering we've had 90 players in this protocol situation already since the start of the season less than a month ago, they've got to figure something out here because it's not working. And that's a terrible segue, but it's a segue into the other not working portion of the day too. The NWHL outbreak that shut down the tournament. Apparently this was a developing situation last night. I don't know which team or teams were involved or if it's every team. And here's where it gets interesting. So the NWHL had a press conference today where Toronto 6 showrunner here said that they would have died to play against Minnesota. I'm thinking might want to not use such a phrase, but basically there's some talk about this bubble they were in and whether or not it was really a bubble. Now I'll say this, the NWHL does not have the kind of money that the NHL, Major League Baseball, football, and basketball would have in order to have a really airtight bubble in place, right? And all the testing needed. So the question marks I have is, are how much money was lost by having this and not finishing it? Does the league lose face in it because they don't finish the tournament? Does this allow another league to maybe get into their space because they weren't able to finish this and it weakens the league as a whole? Or is this just one of those situations that happen? So I posted a poll on the channel in the community page asking, does just having a tournament help the league, or does the fact that they didn't finish it hurt the league? And a vast majority of you say that it doesn't, that it hurts. And then there's about 25% last I looked that said that it didn't matter, because there are going to be people who won't watch it anyways. They don't care whether it happens or it doesn't. They're not going to watch anyways. Or they don't think that it mattered whether they finished or not. They think that the league has the same level of support / credibility, however you want to look at it. Now, what's interesting is the timing of this, that they're saying we're done. Meanwhile, the PWHPA, remember the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association, the union that's been fighting with the NWHL and talked about having a business model that works, they're going to have 2 games at Madison Square Garden. They've partnered themselves up with the New York Rangers, and those games will happen on February 27th and 28th. This is the Dream Gap Tour again. And so we'll be interested to see how those games go, whether or not those go off without a hitch. And a two-game set in New York starts that tour, and that tour will go on. So we've seen one league have to shut things down. We'll see how things go for the players' union. And again, we need a league for women that works. And I think whether you do or you don't support, it has to be a league that works. That getting into a situation like this, they've got an airtight bubble. If they don't, and if players were out, because there's been people in Lake Placid area that have said, yeah, I saw them out at a restaurant after the game. They're out doing this and doing that. Well, then that's not a bubble. Now, whether that's true or it's not true, and the league is saying they all observe protocols, it is bizarre that we have this many outbreaks in a tournament that's only 2 weeks if everybody's observing protocols. But it's a developing story, right? Best of luck to the PWHPA. Maybe get a couple letters out of there. Make it like easier to because it doesn't really flow. But yeah, best of luck to them. Now, on to news that's not related to the ongoing kerfuffle of sports. Martin Firk, his return is likely. That's the reason I'm wearing a Kings jersey. Now, I know Kaliev was put on the taxi squad. On off days when guys get put on the taxi squad, don't read too much into it, because teams are playing around with the cap and they're moving guys down, moving guys up for cap reasons. And so I don't pay a whole lot of attention unless there's a reason to pay attention. And there are a couple here that there's a reason. But I'd like to see Firk on a line with Kaliev and Velarde. I don't know if that works. Firk and Velarde showed that they had some chemistry late last season before the pause. If it works with Kaliev, I want to see it. That would be a lot of fun. And yeah, so we'll see what LA does. Peter Mrazek. So notice that we talked about him yesterday, and he might need surgery, but it was just upper body injury. Now we know what it is. He's had surgery on his right thumb. And I heard that, and I thought, so it's the kind of injury that back in the 80s, they just would have taped his hand up and said, get back in the net. So it's surgery on his right thumb. It's just a finger. If you lose it, you lose it. Get back in the net. So we don't have a timeline for when Mrazek's coming back, but that's better than shoulder, I would think. I would think that that's going to be less time out of the lineup than a shoulder problem or concussion, this kind of thing. So surgery on his thumb. Maybe there is a way to tape it up at some point over the next few weeks. But again, goaltenders, they do use their hands a lot, and you want to make sure you're at 100%. And so if there's not a way to protect the injury, then they're going to have to wait until he's fully recovered. But we'll see what Carolina does. I had to laugh when I did this. So now this is the thing with Line A, and I'm going to apologize. I'm going to apologize to each and every person watching this video. All of you. Domi's practicing with Line A and Texier at today's practice. So I'm like, all right, the latte line didn't work. It lasted one game. But Domi, Line A, and Texier, Domi, D-O, L for Line A, T for Texier, the Dolt line. There you go. I'm really, really sorry. It's now my goal, every time Line A's on a different line, to find a way to have some sort of an acronym. Because that's the thing in hockey, right? You have, like, here in Vancouver, you got the 649 line. So there's a way to do it. And so I apologize to Columbus fans and hockey fans everywhere. I apologize to everybody. I'm really sorry. Owen Tippett. So I talked about the taxi squad, right? Tippett being sent to the taxi squad for Florida feels more like it's an actual move rather than a paper move. In that Florida, I don't think they're near the cap, A. And B, Tippett hasn't been playing very much. I think he got like 8 minutes in their last game. He hasn't got a point yet this season. He was envisioned as being potentially a top 6 option for them, and it's not working out. So there's been talk of whether or not Connolly might be on the trade block, and now we see Tippett down on the taxi squad. So while Florida has a really good record, there are moves being made here to tell you that GM's not necessarily liking 100% of what he's seeing here. And so moves are being made that need to be made. Or, Joel Quenneville is the one making these decisions and saying he's got to go. I know which guys work for me, and, Tippett's got some more work to do. So we'll see. They waited a long time on Tippett. If you got to wait a little while longer, okay. But, yeah, we'll see what happens with him. And then the final note of the day here on the board is Paul Maurice. So a lot of people mad at Blake Wheeler, and they're mad at Blake Wheeler too in the analytics community for his defensive numbers. And when Maurice was asked about it, he wasn't very pleasant in it, other than pointing out that Wheeler has 11 points in 10 games. I'm not going to use all the expletives that he used in his answer, but I don't think he was excited about that. And I'll say this, analytics do have a place in hockey. They're important. They're part of the picture. So I understand the pushback, but at the same time, I also agree Wheeler's got to be better 5-on-5 defensively. Absolutely, I'm not going to argue that right there. Maurice has a point about 11 points in 10 games. People can come through then and say, hey, only 2 of those are 5-on-5. Both points to me are valid. So Maurice is an older coach. He's been doing this for a very long time. I'm guessing analytics are not something he was really overly worried about. And again, that's a whole debate for another time. But I understand where he's coming from. I also understand where the analytics community is coming from on this. Wheeler, he might be better off being a special teams guy and having his ice time cut a little bit if there's a problem. But again, the Jets, they're 6-3-1. They are right now one of the better teams in Canada. And as long as they're winning, Maurice isn't going anywhere, and odds are Wheeler's keeping his spot on that top line, because as long as the team's winning games and he's putting up points, it's sort of like what I said this morning about Seth Jones, what I said about Erik Karlsson. When players are putting up the offensive numbers, a coach can overlook the defense. Fans can overlook the defensive issues as well. It's when those points stop coming that then those defensive miscues become more glaring. But we'll see what happens with the Jets. And hey, it is an interesting time right now to be a hockey fan. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. And as one final note, I've noticed that there tends to be people who kind of get teed off on both sides of the argument surrounding the ongoing issues in sports. And for people who say just shut it all down and don't play at all, they get mad at me. And for the people who say everything should just be open and it's all malarkey, they get mad at me too. So I think I'm doing a pretty good job of presenting all of this and just saying, hey, this is what's happening. And, the players in the league are rolling with it. And we'll see just how far this goes and whether or not we get a full season. But it's fun having hockey back. Hey, thanks again for your support. I'll talk to you again soon.